EM Weekly starting right now, bringing emergency managers from around the world together to learn, share and collaborate.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at in this world. And today, we're going to be talking about corporate security and emergency management, how they can combine, and some of the issues and whatnot that goes along with this with a very special guest. But before we bring in Carlos, I want to bring in Dan Scott, who has some experience in that area too.
Hey, good morning. What's
Morning,
up, everybody?
So I know we're going to be talking about like corporate security in general. We see a lot of this happening where especially in the campus safety area, where we have emergency management under or involved with campus safety, aka security, depending on sometimes it's campus police, depending on where you're at. It goes back to the world of like we're not really sure what to do with emergency management sometimes, and where do we put it? But what do you think? I mean, do you see corporate security specifically now working with emergency management, and what some of the issues are? What do you think?
In working with emergency management, absolutely. There's definitely some tie-in that can take place there, especially as it goes to overlapping with training. The response aspect of things with security, you're looking at more of depending on the capability of the security in which is being utilized, or the public safety, campus safety, police, whatever it may be, and to their level of training and their level of response activity that's required of them or expected of them in many cases. But a lot of when you're looking at security, you're looking at a response mechanism,
right?
And there's a level of training that goes with that. But there also, with that training of security, has to go into a level of knowing what comes next. Because a lot of places that just say they respond to a situation and they don't necessarily know what comes next. And the level of training and cooperation is what is important there.
Right. Well, our guest today is Carlos Francisco. He's an author and also a podcaster as well. And he works in corporate security and also transitioning military and police personnel into the corporate security world. And Carlos, welcome to EM Weekly.
What is up, everybody? Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Todd. It was kind of tight there, man. We're finishing up some meetings as we end the year here in my world of Facebook, and it's been very exciting. Or Meta, can we say
Meta? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been an exciting transition, but I'm super happy to be here and talk to the great Todd and Daniel. I truly appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
So, as you heard in the introduction, we're talking about how emergency management sort of fits in with corporate security specifically. And I think it's one of those things like we've seen a lot more EM, business continuity, crisis management, whatever you want to call it, when it's in the corporate world, kind of fitting in. How do you see emergency management fitting into that corporate security world?
It's quite interesting, right? Because it has always been. Now, this again, everything I'm going to say is my belief in what I think. All right, so don't everybody out there, as you see this throughout life. So I grew up in the business. I started in this thing in 1997. I started with the Walt Disney Company in 1994. And I remember emergency management throughout the corporations was a lot of a second thought. It was an afterthought to everything that we did operationally. And what happened is that as times went along, especially September 11th came around, people were like, oh, man, what's going on? And we had a couple of hurricanes, 2005, and they said, oh, man, we really should be thinking about these kinds of things. And then there was some budgetary money that was allotted to emergency management, business continuity, and resiliency, which is, the wonderful tri-circle of this entire thing. So what we did, we became a little bit better at being able to sell our business to the money makers that were giving us this money. So we were going to the C-suites and finally being able to explain to them that, look, though it hasn't happened, the odds are better today more than ever that it will happen. So we were able to fight better for a budget to line up for emergency management and business continuity and resiliency. So to me, it started somewhere around that time. And then we were able to really showcase the importance of it and then being able to put it into our business. And it just happened to fall underneath the kind of security umbrella because a lot of places didn't have it, or facilities umbrella. So it's one or the other. It's like facilities or security. And the reason for that is that for a very long time in our industry, security was under facilities. Yeah. If you've been around for a little bit, it kind of changed a little bit. But even in a lot of companies today, still under facilities. So that's kind of like how this whole entire thing started. And it's been a whirlwind since then.
Now, how did COVID how does COVID play into that as well? I mean, did you see, because like I know Disney specifically, and I don't want to pick on Disney, but I know people that were part of this and happened to them. When Disneyland closed because of COVID, they chopped their emergency management out. They furloughed them. Why is that?
Well, same with Disney World, by the way. So all their coordinators. So Disney World has, kind of like a senior leader of, we're going to call it emergency management, communications, anything that has to do with the communications center, which is dispatch and everything else. And then underneath that, you have an emergency manager for the company. And by the way, they do a tremendous job. And we'll talk a little bit about all of the exercises that they do, especially at Walt Disney World, where I came from, in that entire 43 square miles of a city. It's crazy. But I think what happened was that, where we're going to put our budget, where we're going to do it, and do we need all these coordinators when there's nobody here to do any exercises, when there's nobody here for us to coordinate, needs meeting, all the way through the tabletop exercises, all the way to the actual full scales. Do we need all of those? And I think that's what happened. When you start looking at where you can cut money out, and it goes back to the opposite of what I said in the beginning, when we were able to fight for the budget and get the budget for it. Now it's the first one to go. Security is the same way too. Security, it's like, well, nothing really happens here. Well, nothing really happens because we're here. And then it's like, well, but then we don't really need you. It looks like, so let's cut some of that budget out. And emergency management just happens to fall right under there as well.
Right.
I experienced that as well. I mean, I started in response. I started in educational law enforcement, which was ultimately we did law enforcement. We did the fire response. I was a licensed EMT as well. So, I mean, we wore all the hats. So we responded to everything. And you see that. And that's how I got into emergency management in general, is because there was a need. And I actually started that need by seeing it was safety compliance, OSHA, ergonomics, ADA. And then from that, rose into emergency management, planning, training, and everything that went along with that, which led me to becoming an emergency manager. But yeah, you see that, and it's usually, we'll just give, especially when it comes to security, you have so many of them so many times. You can say, well, we'll let this person do this, and we'll let that person do that. And next thing you know, you might have an emergency management program, but nobody's working together. Everybody's working in silos. Nobody wants to listen to security. So there are hindrances as well, but usually, as you said, it's usually the first place that funding gets cut, and it's usually the first place they say other duties are assigned as it relates to safety, because safety is in the name, right? So it falls in that. And that's one of the things I deal with now too in my job. I work, I'm the director of public safety and emergency management, and a lot of it they say, well, safety's in your title, so we're going to give you OSHA, we're going to give you ergonomics, we're going to give you hazmat, we're going to there's a level of risk management and OSHA compliance and emergency management. None of them are the same job. Environmental health and safety. And I've said this many times. You find that more and more with a lot of the jobs that are presenting now because of COVID. They're putting them all in one position. They're saying, well, you got to have an environmental health and safety, OSHA background, emergency planning, and you're going to be an emergency manager. Well, that's not what emergency manager is. So the people that are designing these positions, hiring these people, and running these programs don't exactly know what emergency management is and why it's important.
Yeah, it's like we have to find our worth. We have to find our worth, and it's always like that. Do we take on COVID-19, or do we let safety take that on, or do we let HR take that on? Because now we got to do tracing, right? Contact tracing. Now you're talking about some medical stuff. Does it really apply here, where we can't tell people that somebody was sick with COVID? So there's all these things. And then for a lot of companies, it landed back in security and the emergency management folks, because it's like, well, security, you have the access control. So if we need to figure out who was where in what room, then we'd have to go to you anyways, right? And then some security people are like, whoa, I don't want to take on that liability, man. That's really not what I do. I do security of a site, or whatever the case may be. The physical part of it, I don't deal with that stuff. And then safety is usually a small team. So safety within a company, they're like, wait, there's only like one or two of me, like I can't take on. And then the emergency management team, which is usually a small team as well, they're like, hey, I'm not quite sure that's the way to go. Do I do it? And then it's like, all right, well, I'll do it. I'll do it. Or the total opposite 180. I'll do it because I need to show my worth.
Right.
It's a contradiction all the time for us, it seems.
On Tuesday, on my Tuesday show, Business Continuity Today, I'm actually going to be talking about saying no and essentialism, and find out what the essential role is for yourself at your organization. So it's kind of apropos of the conversation we're having today. But when it comes to really engaging, even if it's two separate divisions, even if you have emergency management here and corporate security here, right? I mean, they really have to work together when it comes to drills, when it comes to actual exercises. I mean, the greatest example of this is Rick Rascola from on 9/11, right? I mean, he himself is credited for saving almost 2,226 people along those lines because of his forward thinking and doing exercises and training. Now, he was corporate security, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, as you were saying this, I'm going through this entire thing on the security piece, which is interesting because the whole part of the emergency management circle, I think that we all grew up with in the business. The old mitigation, preparedness, and then like response, recovery, like the prevention of things. That you have to have it lined up. You have to have it lined up with security because we're involved in all those things. But it's the relationship that's built within the facilities, the relationships that are built within the site operations folks, the relationships that are built with all the way up to the CEO, which I want to talk a little bit about company culture towards emergency management, which is extremely important. But you're right. A lot of those people do come from the security world, and that's just how it falls. And like Daniel came from law enforcement, a lot of law enforcement. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of great companies are hiring fire department folks. So fire department folks fall right into that great, Daniel talked about hazmat. Now all of a sudden I'm in charge of hazmat, well, there's some great fire department folks that have that safety hazmat kind of background. So,
yeah. Kenneth Christian says the banking industry should focus more on emergency management as well. Actually, I know somebody who moved into the banking industry as the VP of emergency management. So that's a interesting take on that too. And then Michael comes back and says, I've seen public agency EM members move to private sector, then move back because they couldn't move the company along. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's not easy. Like to sell emergency management. Look, this is what you got to tell. This is what you got to tell people. Look, every once in a while we're going to do major exercise where we're going to bring as many people as possible. And by the way, you're going to have to pay every single one of these people while they're here doing this exercise. Now, the full scale might take us somewhere between 4 to 8 hours. I'm trying to figure out how big this thing is going to be. Oh, plus we got to do the tabletop before that. So that's going to take another couple of hours of pay. And a lot of companies just go, whoa, can you just tell people what to do in case an emergency happens? And they forget, that like basketball players, they just don't go on a court and play ball. And if they win, you got to practice, right? You got to put the time into that. So a lot of people go back and like, I thought this was going to be what I wanted, and I thought this was the future. So let me get in this thing, right? Well, I think it's the future, so I can be the first one there. But there's no way. I'm going right back to security.
Well, I'll tell you what, too. One of the issues that I've seen, and this is an issue that I personally am trying to ignite in people to overcome, is the desire. I mean, you get burned out and you get beat down when you try to do things, and you see that ultimately you're trying to push an envelope that's not moving. Change your approach. Don't quit. You know what I mean? There's a different. Going backward. Shouldn't be an option. I give up. We should, as the individual. We, as the individual, have to show our worth, why it's important we do what we do, how it's going to benefit the organization, and we have to change our approach. We don't give up. I mean, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, right? And one of his things, he says, how often or how long do you let your baby try and walk before you cut them off because they're not getting it? You don't do that. You don't. You right. Let them keep going and keep going and keep going until they finally get that, right?
Right.
You as an individual, as the emergency manager, as the security, as wherever you are in whatever role you play, you keep trying. You keep changing your approach. If that approach didn't work, you change it. You go at them a different way. And we have to work more off of influence than authority where we are right now. I see it's changing. As Todd said, he saw someone that just one of his friends went to be a vice president of emergency management. You don't see that very often, but you're seeing it grow. That as a vice president, they're becoming in the C-suite, or they're becoming as a director, and they're being removed from underneath others because they have a bigger influence to play. And we're going to see more of that and more of that as long as we, the individual doing the job, continues to drive it forward and doesn't give up.
Well, hey, Carlos, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about corporate culture. Hey, Dan.
What's up?
2 weeks, we're going to be heading out to, well, maybe a week and a half. We're going to be heading out to New York City for the NDEM conference. You excited about it?
Excited about that, man. We get to meet Craig and we get to meet Pete over there and get to watch you give your speech. I'm excited.
Yeah, so the NDEM conference is going to be awesome. It is November 17th and 18th in New York City at the Javits Center. If you can't make it there though, we do have the ability to watch it live by live stream. And so if you just jump on to our LinkedIn page, you can sign up over there. And also we'll have the links down in the show notes too to be able to sign up to go to that. So if you can't make it to New York City, which we'd love to have you there, you can also join us with a free live stream as well. So excited about New York though, right, Dan?
I am, man. They got the new 3-story Harry Potter store I'm going to.
What? I didn't even know about that.
Got to do some magic.
And hey, also, one of the things we have a great sponsor. It is Disaster Tech, and Dan and I had the opportunity to sit down and watch the Voltron product that they have, and it really is going to make exercises and training really easy to use. Dan, what do you think of Voltron?
You know what, that, in the book that you're actually going to be referencing in your next podcast about essentialism, right? They talk about gameplay and gamification and how that's important in expanding our minds and expanding and getting people to learn. And that new Voltron is definitely a way to do that when it comes to exercises and gamifying exercises. And I think it's going to be outstanding once it hits the market. Absolutely.
And if you guys want to learn more about that, go to disastertech.com, and also you can follow them on Twitter at Disaster Tech. So go follow them at Disaster Tech on Twitter. And again, check out Voltron. It's really cool. I'm excited about it. I know there's some opportunity there for people to test it out, and I highly recommend going and checking it out because it's going to really game change how you guys do training and exercises, especially with injects and stuff like this. It makes things so much easier and so much more fun to do for you as a planner. No more having to create all this crazy measles because they're already there for you. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Carlos, why don't you come back in and we'll talk about corporate culture and emergency management and whatnot. So,
yeah,
how do you really engage the C-suite and get them to understand what we do as emergency managers and why it's an important part of the organization?
So, it's funny because Daniel brought this up. You mentioned, look, I can't do this, so I'm going to go back to security. But this is the thing. They got you there. You got there. You're there, right? So what did you learn from your past? What did you learn from your past that got you there, right? And then can you keep that in the minds of the folks that are paying for you and everybody else? Can you do this marketing thing of how important it is for you to be there and be able to almost be a small salesperson? Everybody in the C-suite, you have to have sold something sometime to be able to make it there. And I think, by the way, Dan, that's kind of like the key to staying there and keeping the C-suite engaged and everything else, right? So what did you learn from the past? The reason why I got here, that's the way to be. And then I'm going to go, as soon as I finish with this thought, I'll go into Disney and why the Disney culture is, we were doing over 120 full-scale exercises a year in 43 square miles. And to do that in a place like that is just an incredible feat. But, and then, does the culture kind of aligns with your core values? And the funny thing is this, a lot of companies, especially on the security side of the core value of security, it's about keeping people safe and secure. Well, how do you sell emergency management back to the core value of what your company is talking about and what your security force is talking about, right? We're not doing that. We're not doing that enough. Again, it's kind of like part of this marketing plan. We almost should have gone to marketing school or something like that at the same time, or some kind of business school, And then how do you find the great people to complement you? And the reason why I always say that is because I'm almost like an actor. I have no problem being in front of the screen, talking to people and all that, but I really need support on people that can write things down, put things in order for me, make things right, do the paperwork on the side. I'm a pretty good salesman. I'm a pretty good marketer, like I've been saying. But how do you find people that are be able to so help me communicate to the C-suite how well we're doing, how important these things are? I need somebody like that, and sometimes you just don't, and which creates a better communication and everything else. And then are we having fun with it? You were talking about injects. If you ever, done some exercise, every once in a while, some people throw some weird injects over there, which I never liked, by the way, because they're not lifelike. And we want things that are real, that could happen in an incident. When you're talking about Spider-Man happen to be coming down the building as you were doing this exercise and get shocked on that one power line as we're doing some hazardous material exercise. Like, it makes no sense. It's crazy. We shouldn't be doing those kinds of things. But you should have fun, man. You should have some interjects that are interesting, gets people thinking. But you've got to invite the people to drink that Kool-Aid, that emergency management Kool-Aid, and we just don't do that enough. And after some of you guys' thoughts, I'll tell you about how Disney does that.
Yeah, absolutely. And back to the injects thing is you're right. I mean, like, some of them are ridiculous. Sometimes that's not real. But the idea of adding a cascading event down there to really kind of stress out your team, I think that's always important. Because it's never just straightforward. You always have like that one-off thing that occurs that will make things like worse. But you kind of have to do that to stress stuff. But yeah, I mean, there are some fun. And I say, it sounds weird, right? Those of us that are people from outside of emergency management are like fun. Like the zombie apocalypse, task or something like that. You can do like around this time of year. The turkey exploded in the oven type thing. Things like that are kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, I think that we should be working creative ways to get people trained because, like we're talking about before, the gamification. But the only thing is if you do that stuff, you alienate the C-suite that goes, hey, we need to take this seriously. Why are we doing these stupid drills if you're not going to take this job seriously? And it's so it depends on what the corporate culture is. I think that if you're in Morgan Stanley, it's probably a little bit harder to have that fun one compared to if you're at Disney, which more people are creative at the Disney culture. So understanding where you're working is very important too, as well, don't you think?
Well, so the core value, that's right. One of the first things I said, you have to understand your company's core values. I'll give you one. Disney's core values are safety, courtesy, show, efficiency. Safety, courtesy, show, efficiency. That is the 4 keys. Safety, any of the other ones never trump safety because safety comes first. So because of that, it's easy for me to go in and sell them on the idea that we need to do emergency management exercise. We need to make sure that people are safe, all the other thing. You're right. The banking industry is kind of stiff. I know a lot of wonderful guys that work in the banking industry. All of them came from the FBI. They still wear their shirts and tie every single day to work. And it's kind of, rigid. It's a rigid business to be in. And you're right. They're not laughing and smiling and trying to make sure that the guests are having the most wonderful day of their lives. Right? Which then I want to make sure that my employees are having the most wonderful day. For them, it's like, I want to make sure that the bank is returning an investment. I want to make sure that the bank is investing well for everybody else that has bank account with us. I want to make sure, the core values are definitely not that. You have to fight through it. But I'll tell you, every CEO that I ever met, if you do a great job of marketing, explaining to them how the bottom line will be affected in the banking industry if we don't do set exercises. Now, I'm not asking you to do a major exercise where 2 guests are stuck in a roller coaster in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't make sense in the banking industry. But I think you should be doing an exercise on a power outage of one of your major data centers.
Yep.
With Facebook today, I happen to be one of the leaders of the data center team. And you might want to think about that and try to find a way to make it creative,
Yeah, I mean, you guys just went through that, right? Just the other day or like a week ago when Facebook kind of collapsed and the whole world fell apart.
I mean, right? I mean, that's the thing. And it took us about 6 hours to put it back together on something that's recreated in 17, 18 years now. So, but you got to do those exercises and make sure that we had it. So, we not to go really into much into that, but we had a team that was ready to go to make sure the systems were back on. And that's the key. Imagine a major incident happens to your company and it takes you only 6 hours to bring it back to exactly where it was before then. That's a pretty amazing feat in any resiliency team that you can possibly imagine. So I got to give all those folks kudos for making it happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Although I tell you that one thing, that incident proved to, I think, the world, like how integrated, Facebook is into everything that we do, especially people that are in the, in the marketing departments and stuff.
Oh yeah, there you go. Marketing again. I think we all should go to some type of marketing certificate or so get one from those universities.
Oh, you're 100% right. It's one of my biggest. I've been preaching that for a year now. I mean, the market. I think we need to be better marketers and salesmen. You nailed it. I think we do. We need to studying it. I've been studying marketing and sales for a long time, but really like diving into it and ultimately learning to apply it this year. We have to be able to market it, and I feel like as an industry. Even all the way up to FEMA, we need to be able to market what we do, how we do it, why it's important, and how the individual can do it, and how we can help them do it. So we're definitely not doing it enough. But as the individual in the job, you have to learn how to market yourself, and you have to learn how to sell yourself to the team in which you're trying to serve. And ultimately, it boils down to this: service. You are there to serve. You are there. That's what we do. We serve others. And in order to do that right, we need to build ourselves up.
Yeah, Daniel. The funny thing is, to go back into Disney again, it's all about storytelling. The company has never changed its idea of storytelling. Listen, the reason why people follow, a leader at Disney is because the leader can tell a great story. They're amazing story. The reason why people follow Walt Disney when Walt Disney began is because he was able to put together an amazing story. The reason why people will follow you in the emergency management world is because you can tell a great story. And if you're not a great storyteller, you have to go meet with people, sit down with people, do benchmarking, share ideas on how they are doing it. We work too much in silos until today, by the way. I'm a huge fan of benchmarking. There's not a city that I go to, and I lead a large team in the United States, that if I go to that city and I know that evening I have it open, I am contacting any of the major companies that are there, their leaders, and I'm sitting down with them and having dinner. And I don't mind buying dinner because it's a benchmarking opportunity. And I sit down with them and I'm asking, one of my favorite things is to reach out to all the folks in the NFL. Prior to this, I was one of the security directors for Super Bowl 50. That's how I came to California, by the way, from the Walt Disney Company. So doing all those things, I'd love to reach out to the NFL folks, NBA folks. Hey, what are you doing tonight, man? I'd love to take you out to dinner, tell you a little bit about what we do, maybe tell me a little bit about what we do. And I usually get like a tour out of it, out of the stadium tour, which is kind of cool. But we don't do that enough. Sharing is caring. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, safety and security and emergency management should never be a leading edge for any company.
Right.
Any company. We're not in the sales business, and people have to learn that. We're not in the sales business. We're in the emergency management business, and we need to take care of each other. If something happens in the industry down in LA that's near you, that's one of the major companies, or wherever the case may be, it affects everybody else around. So if you think that all the things that happen at Facebook or Meta now doesn't affect all of the other social media companies, you're out of touch.
Absolutely.
Sharing is caring.
Hey, Carlos, speaking of marketing, let's talk about your book for a second.
Oh, that thing. Yes.
Yeah.
So, I have it right here with me. And the reason why I have it with me is not because I like to stare at it. I'm actually recording it audio now. So you want to get into corporate security. That's the book. And, it actually breaks down some of the emergency management, the cycle, the resiliency part of it. And it was really meant for people, by the way, Daniel. You said you came from the law enforcement world. I spent a couple of years as a reservist trying to be a cop. I was never good at it. But it helps folks that are transitioning from the military, law enforcement, and federal careers in understanding what corporate security is like. Because as much as we want to say it's apples to apples, it's not. How you dealt with an incident command system as a police officer, in some companies, they don't even know what that is. So if you come in there and you start trying to sell your ideas and tell us, and the structure, the corporate structure doesn't work that way, you're going to fail. It's not going to. So you have to find ways to do those things. So that's what this book is about. It's for anybody that's transitioning, wants to transition into the corporate world, to get a sense of what the corporate world is like. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I got the book, read it. I think it's great, and I do recommend it. Matter of fact, a couple weeks we're gonna have the 10 books that belong on Emergency Manager's bookshelf, and we might be talking about your book at that time.
Oh man, I gotta give you a trophy. Hold on, I got you a trophy.
I got a trophy. I appreciate that. I'll put that over on my shelf.
That's pretty funny.
All right. Well, hey, look, we're here. We're coming to the end. One last question: if people are trying to get a hold of you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me through LinkedIn. Usually, it's my easiest mode. Just find Carlos Francisco CPP. I'm that guy. I have a picture of me holding my book because I'm so proud of it. Or even through different groups and bodies. And I run a podcast called the Corporate Security Translator Podcast. I run a small company that is it's a corporate security magic, where I try to bring white glove service and back into our security industry, so people can understand that we're living in a corporate area, no longer in the militaristic era anymore. Just find me there. I'm everywhere. Carlos Francisco CPP, the Corporate Security Translator.
Yeah, and I think it's important, the translator part of it there, because translating what you do for a living is critical. And talking to the people that need to have those make decisions. And yeah, it's a different world for sure, Carlos.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. You guys are awesome.
Absolutely. Stand by and we'll talk to you a little bit, but we've got to sign off here. Hey, Daniel, what do you got going on this week?
This week?
Yeah.
Hopefully take a break. I like to take a nap.
Absolutely. Go take your nap. On Tuesday on Business Continuity Today, we're going to be talking about, essentialism and making decisions. And I think that's kind of important. So join us on Tuesday for that. And other than that, I think thank you all for joining us here today and being with us. It's been great. I appreciate the comments. And don't forget, follow us on next week when we're in New York. And we'll see you then. So until then, everybody take care, stay safe, and stay hydrated.